Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Hawley-Bernardez, and this semester we are going to be looking at intimate partner violence, also called IPV, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why I call it intimate partner violence as opposed to domestic violence at some point. So I'm looking forward to working with you all this semester. Thank you so much. So this PowerPoint is part one of two, and this is just to get you introduced to the class. I'm going to start with talking a little bit about the syllabus and talking a little bit about your teams, and then we'll go into a domestic violence quiz. It's not for a grade, it's just something for you guys to look at and consider your beliefs and your perceptions about domestic violence. Um, and then I will start talking more about IPV. And then next week we will have part two as well. So this whole section is pretty self-explanatory, so I probably won't comment on each slide. But after the memes, you'll see some discussion of the discussion board posts that are expected of you throughout the semester. Also be sure and take a look at the syllabus for the assignments as well. And we'll talk about those throughout the semester as we go along. So your references page is going to be very important for the discussion board posts. It's important that if you're talking about something specific or you're making a statement that you have a citation to back that up. We don't want to talk about opinions necessarily in the discussion board posts. You want to really be very factual about your discussion board posts. And then also in your safety plan paper, you want to make sure that you have citations there as well. For your two critical reflection papers, those are more like a journal style paper, so you are welcome to give your opinions and what your beliefs were before and after taking this class. But if you do talk about things that you have learned, it is highly recommended that you use a citation for how and where you learned that. Thank you so much. So again, I know this is kind of a joke, but we are going to have one group project, the safety plan paper, in this class. And so for your teams, you're expected to work together as a team. And because this is an online class, we will have to be talking about different techniques and things that you will need to do as a team in order to communicate and set up times for you guys to work. Everyone has different schedules, jobs, things like that. And so it's going to be very important for you to prioritize working in your teams together throughout the semester for that safety plan paper. And we can talk about more of that as we go along. So each week for the discussion board, I pose a question for you guys about either a reading or the topic of the week and things like that. So you will, each week in your discussion board post, you need to respond to that question, as well as come up with 2 questions of your own from the readings. So, when you're doing the readings, I want you to really think critically and question and challenge some of the things. These questions, these 2 questions that you come up with, really need to be not something that is rhetorical, something that can't be answered. It should be something that is a good quality question that you're thinking about while you're doing these readings. So, in addition to posting your own post, you'll need to respond to 2 other people, and it will be 2 people within your team. So, you should be getting to know the people in your team, and by the end of the semester, you guys should be communicating pretty well with each other. So, for this question, I really want you to open up a Word document and take notes about this question because it will be very helpful for you when you do your critical reflection number 1 paper. What do you think about when you hear the phrase domestic violence or spousal abuse or intimate partner violence? What are the first things that come to mind? What are some preconceived notions that you have? What are some myths that you've heard of? What are some of the things that you know about intimate partner violence? And take some notes just in a Word document because again, that will help you for your critical reflection paper, the first one. When you're asked to just talk about what you know or knew about intimate partner violence before starting this class or at the beginning of this class. And then we'll look at how that kind of has changed throughout the semester. So for this quiz, it's not a quiz for a grade. It's just something for you guys to take a look at. And again, it will be very helpful for you if you have a Word document open so you can kind of take notes about some things that you thought were true or were not true about domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and some of the things that you're learning as you go throughout the semester. This will be very helpful for you for your critical reflection papers. So, for consistency purposes, I like to use the CDC's definition of intimate partner violence, which is physical, sexual, or psychological harm by a current or former partner or spouse. you will find that in the fields of intimate partner violence, there are a lot of different definitions, and that is one of the problems with intimate partner violence is when you do research on it, everyone's definition of it is different, and that makes it hard to measure what it is. Similarly with the terminology, right? So we've talked about domestic violence versus intimate partner violence, interpersonal violence, spousal abuse, battered women. So there's just lots of different terminology. And I think next PowerPoint we talk about that a little bit more. So here is where I want to put out two kind of disclaimers for you guys. First and foremost, this can be a very, very difficult topic for some people to talk about, to write about, to think about. Many times because individuals have either experienced intimate partner violence themselves or they know someone who has experienced intimate partner violence, someone who's close to them. So this could be a very difficult 16 weeks for you guys, especially if this is kind of a trigger for you. So if this is something that you're really struggling with, thinking about, talking about, please, please, please come and talk to me either in my office or schedule a time to have a phone chat with me. This is going to be a pretty difficult few weeks for you guys if this is something that is difficult for you to talk about. So that's definitely something that you want to keep in mind. The second kind of disclaimer that I like to put out there is throughout this semester, I may use terminology like he or she, he to refer to an abuser or she to refer to a survivor. And I do recognize that there are male victims of intimate partner violence. I have worked with and done counseling with male victims of intimate partner violence. It is absolutely something that occurs in our society. I will say, however, that intimate partner violence is 85% of survivors who come forward are female victims. So, whether it is more prevalent in our society that there are male victims, I don't know. I don't know if they're just not coming forward, or we don't know about them, or it's not happening. We don't know. So I may use terminology like he or she, which is generalizing. However, I do recognize that there are male victims, and I do know that that is absolutely something that occurs in our society. So, anytime I use that kind of terminology, it's simply for simplicity purposes, and know that I recognize that both he and she can be used interchangeably throughout. So going back to the quiz, intimate partner violence is not a one-time occurrence. It is definitely something that is a pattern of behaviors that occurs over a period of time. And we'll talk about the cycle of violence as well. But it includes repeated psychological abuse, sexual violence, isolation, economic coercion. I'll talk about that as well significantly. So keep in mind, intimate partner violence is not like a one time instance that happens. This is something that is a pattern of behavior over usually long periods of time. Intimate partner violence is all about power, and we will talk about that next PowerPoint. But in any relationship where there is a power dynamic between the two individuals, intimate partner violence can occur. And so it can occur in heterosexual couples, males and females. It can occur between gay men, lesbians, bisexuals, and transgendered persons. So it can occur in all different types of relationships, any relationship pretty much where there is a power dynamic that comes into play. So I mentioned earlier the terminology of intimate partner violence. It's most often called domestic violence. I refer to it more specifically as intimate partner violence, but then there's lots of other different terminologies that's been used before as well. In the criminal justice system, they call it family violence. And so there's lots of different terminology, which makes doing research on it even more difficult sometimes. So kind of keep that in the back of your head as we go forward. Michael Johnson is a psychologist who actually breaks down the terminology of intimate partner violence even more specifically. So I think his article is one of the ones that you have for reading this week or next week. And he breaks down, again, intimate partner violence even more specifically into intimate terrorism, violent resistance, situational couple violence, and mutual violence resistance. Again, this is just an example of even more terminology that's coming out regarding IPV. As we wrap up this part one, this is just giving you an idea of the different sources of data that we use for understanding intimate partner violence. So we get our data from surveys, from the criminal justice system and what's reported, from the civil justice system, from medical records, and from domestic violence shelters.